Hi everyone. I'm coming to you from my room this time, just for something a bit different. Um, okay, so there's two things that I want to talk about today for shape shifting and skin turning as a topic, and one of them is preparation, and the other is execution. One of the first things that is important with this is the notion that you need to get into the habit of being able to shape shift into lots of different things at a light level. But when you come to actually transform, such as for a Sabbath, you want to do this with a limited number of forms, maybe even just one form to begin with, so you're getting into the mental habit of transforming into things. It could be something really small, like a creature, or it could be your whole neighborhood or your whole property, which are excellent ways of warding because you can feel things as you get used to transforming into the whole property. You can feel what magical influences are afoot. Um, Nonetheless, I think that what I want to focus on today is more transforming into one thing in particular, such as for the Sabbath. And we've all got All Hallows coming up down here, and Rude Mass or Beltane happening in the north. So it's probably a good time to think about the Grand Sabbath and flying to it. Um, One thing that I really strongly recommend is keeping some kind of idol of the form of the animal that you might wish to turn into or be able to ride to the Sabbath. Um, However, depending what kind of animal it is that you work with, you might find that it helps more to have something like a broom or a riding stang or staff that you use to give power to in between the Sabbaths. um, something like a simple pole, which can then be anointed, and it can also wear parts of different animals while you prepare to lie down to go into a flight state. One of the things that I mentioned in the course notes was the need to feed the pole or the broom fats. Um, in some cases, that could be the fats of the animal itself, particularly if you have found an example of that animal as roadkill or however else, you came by it in that state. Or it could just be simply something that the spirit seems to like. I've got something here which is mainly beeswax and certain herbs that are liked by the particular, like to eat, like that they like to graze on. In this case, in that which I can then anoint the stang with. Um, One of the things that I find helpful is when you're leading up to working with that pole in ritual, it's good to go from the top to the bottom with anointing it with the fat. um, this helps to enliven it and get it strong, and then at the end of the flight, you can stroke it back down to the bottom to settle it back down or to release the spirit of the fetch from the riding pole. Um, so, what I would suggest is that if you're going to do this, you want to leave enough time and space and comfort to yourself that you know that you can lie down without being interrupted. um, I would suggest lots of practice sessions throughout the week with turning into different things so that your sense of sentimentality isn't too strong. I use that word on purpose because I think what stops us from transforming into something else is a sense of familiarity with our form, and you need to be able to break through that to be capable of doing this sort of work. You need to be able to imagine yourself as, a bat or a hare or a toad. And doing that, it helps to spend some time around those animals if you can. But if not, simply acquiring parts of them. Um, Obviously, this can be done in an ethical way if you come across the body of that creature. And most people do, I find, with their fetch beast, tend to find an example of the animal already having passed, and they're able to skin it or do whatever they need to do to get that link. It could be as simple as trimming a little bit of the hair off and, putting it into the ointment that you rub onto the staff before flight. Um, so yeah, that's pretty straightforward, and you can gradually give power to that idol of your fetch leading up to the flight. You can do this by, um, wafting incense onto the idol. You can do it by making fat offerings. Um, you can Well, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. You can write messages to it and burn them and anoint the item with the ash from the burnt item. That's another good way to transfer power to it. And when the moment comes where you decide you're going to do the flight, and I would definitely, if you can, do it on a cross quarter such as All Hallows. Um, just because there is a gateway that's open at those Sabbats, which is very potent, and the chances of being lifted during that time very, very strong. Um, so yeah, what I would do is I would take your items, such as your staff or broom, into a comfortable place with you, such as your bed, so that you're completely warm and comfortable. And having throughout the day done a lot of swapping back and forth, even when you're walking down the street, you could swap briefly into the people that are passing by, reminding yourself that you don't actually know what their life entails, what stories they have, or what they've experienced, and trying to sort of imagine what those stories might be. I think that's a very powerful thing. But not just humans, of course, also plants and animals and places. And I think if you've spent your week doing that, and also surrendering the sense of sentiment that we carry about our own form as much as possible, you shouldn't find it too difficult. Whether or not that results in you transforming into the animal, or whether it results in you riding the animal, these are two quite different things at a magical level. Riding the animal tends to mean that you're partaking of it in the same way that somebody that is a horse whisperer or other charmer of animals partakes of the consciousness of the animal when they ride it, but doesn't actually become the animal, or to actually transform into it. And I think it's best to leave that up to the animal to decide. But in a nutshell, it's important to have this opportunity, particularly around the Sabbath point, for a strong transformation into that creature. You want to spend some time imagining what it would feel like if you haven't already transformed into this particular animal, to have the fur or the feathers or the freedoms that that animal has, the ability to fly in the case of birds. That's quite an important part of this work. So, what I would say is when you get into that situation, if your staff or broom or fetish item, like say you might have a stuffed version of that animal, or you might have even just a very empowered image of that animal that you've been spritzing with wine or honey or other offerings onto the picture frame near you or with you in your bed. If it's empowered enough, you should feel a lift that happens that pulls you into that experience. I would say to surrender as much as possible. Don't try to make it happen. Just be playful about it. The way a child pretends to turn into something rather than the hard edged way that, some practitioners might work with something, and just see what happens. And if nothing outrageous happens, if you don't have a huge big transformation experience, simply just keep playing with it. Don't place pressure on yourself or on the creature because it will happen when it's ready. I've heard some people who set themselves up for a great big flight with their newly discovered fetch animal, only to find out that nothing happened on the night, even though it was a Sabbath. Um, and then the next night, when they weren't intending anything, they transformed spontaneously. So, yeah, those are some things to think about. The fat offering is important because you will burn fat in this if you do transform successfully. So I hope that helps you all out. Please ask any questions if you need to, and take care of yourselves.